Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Leading Mindset. I'm your host, Ali Payani, and today we're going to discuss the entrepreneurial challenges, and also we're going to discuss the importance of the technology adoption, especially like the nowadays after the pandemic and how important it is for the organizations. So today my guest is Felix Odigie. He's the CEO of the MeetMe in the Cloud. Hello, Felix.
Hi, Ali.
Nice to have you today. Let's get started with the story of the Meet Me in the Cloud. How did it all start?
Great question. Meet Me in the Cloud was founded by an ex-Cisco veteran, and it came out of the growing need whereby when customers acquired, collaboration technology, Webex, there was a bit of a struggle in terms of, just purchasing it and then it sits on the shelf because, the knowledge workers who needed it did not know why they needed to use it and probably didn't exactly know how to adopt it. People are not very open to change sometimes. And so the need was established and was kind of easily identified. And it's just as simple as if you show someone how to use a new tool to do their job, just the way they're doing it today, or even a little better, they'll use it. And of course, as the purchase of the technology, like the CTOs or the CIOs who invest in this technology, what they're after is a return on that investment. And the return on investment can be in the form of cost savings, efficiency, more collaboration within the work group, ... and even reduce support. So, and the only way to achieve that is if users actually adopt the technology, which is beyond just utilization. You can use a tool by just logging in, but to adopt it means to actually leverage it fully and rip out the legacy system that was originally doing the work. If both systems are still in play, you've not truly adopted and you don't get the full benefit of technology adoption.
True. When have you founded the company?
So I didn't found it. It was founded by, as I mentioned, an ex-Cisco employee. Yeah, a while, about 2011. I acquired it as a small business acquisition about three and a half years ago. And this was because, as part of, I developed a whole search fund model where you could go look for, small, good quality businesses, acquire them and then perhaps scale them to really touch, a broader audience of customers. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, it was a small business, and since I've grown it, almost double, its original size. But it's been quite a journey just because the need for technology adoption is even now just sort of becoming a bit more understood and more popular. Back then, it was sort of ahead of its time.
Mm-hmm. What services do you think is trending now, or what services mainly like people are looking? Do you see also a really big change before and after the pandemic?
Oh, yeah, it's been a bit of a wide swing of a change. So before the pandemic, the story of, collaboration tools like Zoom, Webex, Microsoft Teams was really just, it was not the easiest conversation to have. And then swoosh comes the pandemic, and it's almost like a whole shift happens, and everyone kind of jumps on the use of collaboration tools because you needed to do that if you needed it to work. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that, as I mentioned before, just because you're using the tool does not necessarily mean that you're properly adopting it, right? And that's where we come into play. And now, as we, this is our third year of the pandemic, and that's even, the road is not as smooth as it could be. So now we're even in a hybrid mode. So on the one hand, did not know how to use collaboration tools. Now you kind of know how to use collaboration tools, but you might need to be at home while others are in the office. And so we as a company are now dealing with things like collaboration equity, right? Which is, how do you ensure that from the person who is in the office, in the conference room, to the person who just dials in by phone, you don't see his face, and to the person who dials in using video conferencing tools like you and I are talking right now, how do you ensure that every single person on that same call is treated equally in terms of, how they're how their contribution is treated, that someone doesn't necessarily feel guilty for working from home when someone else is in the office. And the future of work right now is hybrid, and the future of work is going to force companies to make available the opportunity to work remotely whenever possible. It's actually going to become a competitive edge for most companies when they're recruiting now. So things have changed quite a bit. And even my young 9-year-old son is quite savvy at the use of collaboration tech. Certainly more than I was when I was his age.
Right. Well, back to the entrepreneurship. I mean, what do you think really inspired you to be an entrepreneur, or even, as you said, like you're acquiring a company, you wanted to double the size, the revenues, and then having that ambitions. What do you think really motivate you and inspire you to start with?
Creativity and the constant questioning of the status quo. So I've had regular jobs before, but I always found myself looking at, scenarios within the same job and looking for better ways to do the job, or looking for ways outside of the box. My mind was just never settled. I always wanted to do more. I want to do plus. And sometimes, when you're within a company and you're working in a particular section, just because you want to know what the other departments or the other places are doing, even though you have that interest, does not necessarily mean in those companies it's welcome. Well, most companies are doing very good, doing very well with that now, where it's encouraged for you to cross-pollinate with other departments. But I found out quickly that if I was to keep doing that, if I was to keep coming out with creative ways to solve problems, dealing with customers, dealing with different aspects of the business, marketing, sales, engineering, or even product development, entrepreneurship was the way to go. And of course, when I went for my MBA, that didn't help at all. That just put more ideas in my head. And so fast forward, I enjoy operating quite a bit. I've got an investment banking background, and I absolutely love that as well, in the art of the deal. But I also enjoy operating.
How much do you think taking risk play an important role for any entrepreneur, to become successful?
Oh my God, I think it's. I'd be lying if I didn't think it was like 100%. You have to be very comfortable with risk, because it's a risk, and your comfort with risk, calculated or not, it's still risk. So you just have to understand and appreciate that it is a risk. At one point you have a paycheck, and the other point you don't have a paycheck, and you have to sort things out, and you're back. And you don't always do it for the paycheck. There's something else that's tickled there, but there's a significant amount of risk involved, and most entrepreneurs would certainly, I hope, would agree with that, because it's not for the faint at heart. It's really hard being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. What do you think would be maybe the top three, not necessarily top three or like any numbers, top 3 or 4 or 5 skills you would say like an entrepreneur should have or develop to really become more successful?
I think at the top of my list is kind of resilience. And that resilience is I think you have a shortage of things that are saying yes to you and more things that are saying no to you. Whether it's in sales or whether it's you're trying to get through a particular you're mostly hit with a lot of like no's. So the resilience is what makes you not get emotionally and psychologically overpowered by the sort of negative and objections to your approach. And so that's very important. Otherwise, it can be very depressing, and you could get into a very dangerous cycle pretty quickly. Hence, not for the faint of heart. Second, I would say is just a genuine ability to always ask questions and question the status quo. So there's a better way to do what I did yesterday. I may not know it right now, but it'd be great if I could figure it out, just because efficiency is my friend, and I want to be efficient at what I do. I want to find better ways to serve my customers and make them happy, and I want to sort of aspire and growth. And then for me, the third would probably be around just being able to accept that failure is part of the journey. And so, do not just hold back and not try. If you're going to fail, just do it very quickly. Don't fail fast, move on and learn. So it's, for a while, it also took me a bit of getting used to, because I always, failure hurts. It's personal. But that shifted when I realized that, oh no, it's really just part of the journey. It's not. You've heard of the 10-year, 20-year success that, a 20-year, success that happened overnight, right? When people say that. So some things just take a very long time. It's not a straight shot. It's this, you loop down, up, down, it's sideways. Last year you did great, this year you didn't. And it's just, it all comes together between resilience, your ability to continue to question the status quo, and your inherent ability to also just know that failure is part of the journey.
True. And one of my favorite questions that I usually ask toward the end of the podcast, but I'm going to ask you now, is we have a lot of work that we're doing, a lot of thinking, challenges, spending a lot of time in the office and work. How do you, the main kind of a challenge I see everybody, all the entrepreneurs actually asking is, how do you balance your personal life with your business life, and sometimes it's do we have any balance at all? So for some people might be no balance, and they'd be fine with it. But I see everybody try to figure out a way to balance it or spend more time with their families. So you said about your 9-year-old son. So how do you spend time with your family too?
That's a very good question. And for me, it's come with intention. So I've been terrible, all this while with, almost literally becoming a workaholic, working all the time. So initially it was my wife that was she was the clock. She was the one that had to yell at me and say, no, that's it. It's Friday at 9:00. You're off the clock, for the rest of the weekend. And somehow I still find a way to sneak something in to do, because it's just, my mind wanted to feed off of, there's always work to do. And I think that's where it all started. I realized that if I wanted to work 24/7, I would. There's always something to do. If you're not reading about a competitive angle, or you're studying about a particular challenge, it's you're trying to do the administrative work. So because there's always something to do, and I also saw some of my friends in the industry who have been able to, religion has helped them kind of stage gate the work. Like my Jewish friends, with Shabbat, they stop. And that is great. That's a bit, inherent in technology and thus cultural. But, the cases where you're sort of at your own, your own peril, if you will, just intention and intentionality and of course awareness, because awareness is what allows me to sort of be here right now. All I have to do right now in this moment is talk to you and have this interview versus my mind being split into the email I just wrote before I joined this call, or thinking about what my son's doing right now. So if I can just be here in that moment, I find that that's really helpful. So on the weekends, if I'm with the family, I don't think about anything but just them. That's been sort of how I've tried to approach balance. It's almost like now I want to work to live, not live to work, if you will.
Right. Great. Back to the technology adoption. I know that you have your own kind of approach for the companies that they wanted to become your client. So for the audience who are listening and they wanted to learn more about your approach to the technology adoption, can you maybe explain that more in detail?
Sure. We approach technology adoption, with a very strong focus on change management and customized training. The fact is, first we need to understand, the environment where the technology is coming into, because sometimes the first place where you get it wrong is in the install process. You didn't install it properly. You didn't pay attention to all of the users. So we usually work with the IT department to sort that part out. And then the other thing that absolutely is a must is personas and use cases. So understanding the roles and the use cases. And I say those differently because, I might be a systems engineer, but I want to use this particular tool to conduct a sales meeting. Mm-hmm. And it's that the sales meeting is a use case, but my role, my persona is that I'm a systems engineer. So understanding those nuances within companies now becomes, is what we would develop that. We get a good understanding of the company in the beginning. Before we hop into the whole change management scenario where you handle the change like a project and you pay attention to the communication that's involved, how you're going to communicate to different groups so that you slowly get everyone onto whatever the platform is. Because there's a bit of a life cycle associated with adoption where the early adopters always, will take on the technology very easily. Mm-hmm. The biggest chunk of a knowledge worker population are split between the late adopters and kind of like because of this cross-generational population in companies, you have people who don't necessarily are not that open to change. And then, of course, the remaining spread are those that will only jump on until after everyone else has jumped on. Mm-hmm. And so because we're dealing with all these sensitivities within the organization, to really nail it so that, a knowledge worker adopts a particular tool, we then customize the training because the product itself, let's take Microsoft Teams, for example. Let's take Webex, for example. Mm-hmm. The manufacturer, Cisco and Microsoft themselves, they have all kinds of trainings out there. In most cases, it's just training for anyone that wants to use it in they're all functional types of training. But no one's actually taken the time like we would to customize said training for an executive admin, for example. So executive admins, we find, are a very critical part of most organizations when it comes to deploying, say, collaboration tools. Yeah, because they're supporting the executives, you have to make them savvy, comfortable, and happy about leveraging this tool. So hence, we now developed, once we identify the persona, we now developed or customized existing trainings for just the executive admins. And it's very different because they use it to support someone else. So those those very specific type of changes are what makes the training really stick. Mm-hmm. And for us, we kind of treat the whole process like a life cycle because adoption is a continuous process. Why is that? It's not that you're going to keep training all of your life, but the tools get more sophisticated over time. New features. Some have to do with you, some don't. And as the tool gets more sophisticated or changes are happening, you don't want to keep going to the big 30-minute training that you have. You want to go to that snippet of how that change applies to you. And so we treat it like a life cycle where whether you're onboarding a new user mm-hmm. or your users move from one department to another, we've sort of put our perspectives around ensuring that adoption is a continuous process, ensuring that the associated training is customized to the personas and use cases. And then when it comes to digital adoption tools like the WhatFix, Pendos, and WalkMe's out there, that's the other thing. They are an overlay over the technology stack. As the world we're all getting into more hybrid mode, as we're all advancing into a really digital, economy. So digital transformation is everywhere. Well, now the technology stack is getting a bit complex. Mm-hmm. So you want an overlay on top of that technology stack that can help a user kind of self-serve. So I joined your company today. I'm new, and you probably have an adoption plan somewhere. And if you don't, you might just send me over to leverage one of those digital adoption tools that addresses, the specific technology stack. Because now I can self-serve. or serve myself, on my own time. However, it's imperative that that organizations actually start by having their own sort of customized organizational adoption plan, and then the digital adoption is an overlay on top of that. You can't replace it. It's not a rip and replace. And so we also have a digital adoption solution that we're bringing to market. That is exactly that. And we're the best to do it because we've done adoption all our lives, and so we're now developing a tool that will actually, in addition to what we're doing, actually help a user, a company, run their own adoption seamlessly.
What do you think it would be? Maybe again, top three, maybe the importance of the technology adoption that business owners should know about.
So technology adoption is not simple. It's not easy. There's a bit of psychological aspect to it. Knowing how a user uses a tool is critical to success. And knowing why they use a tool is also critical to the success. It's not as simple as just plugging and playing a technology. When you make technology investments, and that can be expensive, what you end up acquiring, for all the good reasons you've acquired it boils down to this. It's a return on investment. You want to make sure you get an ROI on this investment. That ROI comes from your replacing the legacy system, the tool you acquired being actually proving out the case you acquired it, for. And so technology adoption is what goes with that the users, your knowledge workers, and everyone is intended for leverages the tool the way it was designed to be leveraged to go ahead and deliver work within your firm the way that wherever you wanted to effect that change or how you wanted to effect that change. So that's very important. It's not as simple as people think it is, but once you do it and do it right, it's a gift that just keeps on giving. It just keeps on giving. Like you're saving on a lot of expenses. If you do it wrong, you get side effects like a ridiculous amount of calls going to your IT help desk, for example. Now your IT is there to fix tech issues and ensure that you have disciplined rollout, pay attention to cybersecurity, et cetera, et cetera. If you go roll out your collaboration tool the wrong way, for example, now all of a sudden calls going to the help desk include, hey, how do I turn my avatar on in Webex? And they're thinking, wait, is it working? Yeah, so why are you calling me? So now you're inundating them with calls they would rather not be dealing with. So you have to get adoption right. And then this way you really, 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 help the knowledge workers be successful while also not creating unnecessary or additional challenges in your organizations, which is why I think some companies give up too quickly or they just switch from one platform to another. Our philosophy is it doesn't matter what you select, with the right adoption plan, you should be successful with it. So we pay attention to workplace technology. What did you choose? We're not selling you anything. Did you choose to use this? Great. Now let's help you use it. We just get your technology used.
Great. And what would you think would be next for the MeetMe in the cloud? As you're growing the MeetMe in the cloud, you mentioned another product. So what are your plans for the future?
So I think with the release of our digital adoption solution, we think there will probably be a growing ecosystem of users because we really detailed it for, say, the small business and the mid-sized businesses who on a regular basis might not necessarily come to us for consulting services because they might think it pricey. They would certainly go for the digital adoption tools and just self-serve. So now HR department, you hire a new employee, you just give them digital adoption product and they self-serve and they can run and use that tool, no issues. And so from our perspective, we think that ecosystem of digital adoption users will grow, but we will always have the white glove handheld approach for a large enterprise, customers who really want that, even if they acquire the digital adoption tools.
Great. And for my last question, it's my favorite question, is how do you define success? Whether it's personal or business, so whatever the answer you wanted to add.
That is an interesting one, and one that I've been, meditating on quite a bit personally. I think that for me, success has to do with really getting to a place where I love what I'm doing every day, regardless of what it is and regardless of what challenges I'm surrounded by, that I actually wake up and love what I'm doing. That for me is success in the workplace, and success in with family would be that I would have done a whole lot better than my parents did with me, with my kids and my spouse. Like what my parents did with each other, I've improved significantly with my relationship with my spouse, and then in terms of my parent-child relationship, I've done a whole lot better when it comes to my child. If I can just get those two right, from in the workplace and at home, I think I would certainly declare success.
Yeah. Love your answer.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to include all the links on the descriptions, whether some people are watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple. So, but how people can maybe contact you? What would the best way? Is it LinkedIn, your email? So what do you think that would be the best way for people to contact you?
Oh, sure. I mean, we always welcome, being reached out to. Our website is www.meetmeinthecloud.com. Certainly we are on LinkedIn, and I would always, I'm happy to, say hello to anyone that reaches out on LinkedIn, of course. And then we can always reach us at 866-221-3221 as well.
Great. All right. Thank you, Felix. It was a really great conversation. I hope that we can do it again tomorrow in the future. And then thanks for joining me.
Yes, Ali, thank you so much. Great opportunity. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Cheers.